This stealthy looking, drop dead gorgeous gaming PC only cost me $1,200 to build, and this beautiful thing is capable of playing any game at 1440p. And if $1,200 is your budget for your next gaming PC, I've got to say this is a pretty fantastic option. Believe it or not, $1,200 is actually kind of the norm when it comes to a brand new gaming PC, especially if you're going to be buying a pre-built on sites like Amazon and Newegg. And I gotta be honest, a lot of times what you're getting for that kind of money is kind of crap. So for today's build, I wanted to put together a $1,200 gaming PC that was going to outperform at least the vast majority of pre-builds that you're going to be able to buy for $1,200. And anybody can replicate this build because all of the pieces inside of this beautiful build right here are brand new. And after I show you all of the hardware that was used to put this gorgeous thing together, and I show you the performance that you can expect from this system, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you some alternatives at the exact same price point so that we can really fine tune this build to be exactly what you need. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's kick this off and let's talk about the case that we're gonna be using, because your case choice is really the deciding factor on how your PC is going to look. And for today's build, we're gonna be going with the Johnsbow D32 Pro. Now, a lot of you guys know that I have a huge love in my heart for Johnsbow, but that's not why I chose this case for today's build. For only $73, we're getting a premium case that has been designed for exceptional airflow. This case is perforated basically everywhere except for the glass panel, and as an added bonus to that perforation, we do get a ton of dust filters, so keeping our system clean will be a simple process of removing dust filters and washing them off. So I chose to go with an MATX case for two reasons. One, because I like the smaller footprint of the Johnsbow D32 Pro, and because I'm able to pick up MATX motherboards for slightly cheaper than I can for like a full-size ATX board. And for today's build, we're gonna be going with this MSI Pro B650M board, and I was able to pick this up for $140. Now, the B650 motherboard is going back one generation, but for the vast majority of people, the B650 is going to provide you with everything that you're going to need, myself included. If a wizard were to break into my house and replace the X870E board that I have inside of my personal build with this board right here without me knowing, and I were to get on that PC, the chances that I would notice a difference at all are very slim, and I mean it, very slim. This board is going to allow us to run AMD's AM5 CPUs up to and including the 9950X3D if we wanted to throw one of those in here in the future. We have DDR5 RAM support, Wi-Fi 6E, 2 Gen 4 M.2 slots, excellent heatsinks for VRM cooling, and that's just covering the basics. So for $140, what we're getting is a terrific option. Now, as much as I would love to throw a 9800X3D into this board, unfortunately, we have a budget that we need to stick to. So for today's build, we're gonna be going with the Ryzen 5 7600X, which is a 6-core 12-thread CPU with a base clock of 4.7 gigahertz and boost clock speeds of 5.3 gigahertz. Now, regardless of the fact that this is your entry-level AM5 chip, it is still a very strong choice. It's going to allow you to game, edit, stream, all with ease, and for the $150 price tag that you can pick this thing up currently, I mean, it's a very good option. Another great option would be the Ryzen 5 7500F that I have used in numerous builds on this channel, but that really is only if you can get it at the $135 price point, which is becoming harder and harder to find these days. So moving on to our RAM for today's build, I wanted to go with a 32 gig kit. Now, 16 is quickly becoming not enough RAM these days, and especially if you're going with a DDR5 system. So I wanted to stick with more of a darker theme, since the build we're going to be putting together is a little bit more on the darker theme side, and I picked up this Orico kit right here. Now, this is 32 gigs of DDR5 6400 megatransfers per second RAM, and this thing right here comes in at $104. Now, you are able to find cheaper RAM, but when you go for a cheaper RAM, it generally comes with slower speeds. And for today's build, I wanted to stay around the 6,000 megatransfers per second speed because that's kind of the sweet spot when it comes to DDR5 memory. And we're lucky enough to get 6,400 megatransfers per second with this particular RAM. So I think that's kind of a win for the $104 price tag. So moving on to the storage for today's build, I picked up this PNY 1TB SSD. Now, this is a Gen 3 SSD, and currently we are on Gen 5 SSDs, but paying more for performance that I'm probably not going to notice at all is not the theme of today's build. Now, if you're the type of person who's building this system because you want it to be a stronger editing rig, or you're the type of person who moves around large files, then maybe you would want to get a stronger SSD. But as this build is primarily built for gaming, we're not really gonna need more than the Gen 3. This is gonna be all the SSD that we need, even though it'd be a lot more fun to have a 2 terabyte drive than this 1 terabyte drive. But we'll get into swapping hardware at the end of this video when we give you some alternatives to this particular build. But for the $55 price point that this comes in, this is a pretty good option, especially if all you want this system to do is game. I'm gonna go a little bit off script here and jump up on a soapbox and say how much it sucks that like 2 months ago, I was able to pick up a Gen 4 NVMe at this exact same price, and now I can't get a Gen 4 NVMe for anything under 60. These price hikes are awful. That's the perfect segue though into, hey, if you're not doing anything later, hit that subscribe button so that I can keep making these videos. So next up, we do need to cool our CPU. The 7600X, not the hottest CPU in the world. What you could do is pick up like a $20 CPU cooler and this thing would be just fine. But I like to build my PCs with future upgradability in mind. Now, if I did want to throw in like a powerhouse CPU in this in the future, we are going to need more cooling. So I wanted to make sure that we picked up a cooler that was going to be, future-proof for quite a long time. So I went ahead and I picked up this Loda A62 by Osipus, and I was able to get it for $48. Not only is this an amazing looking CPU cooler that also has a digital CPU temp display built in, but it also has much better cooling potential with its dual fin stack design. So if we pick up that stronger CPU, we're gonna have absolutely no issues keeping our temperatures under control. Now, everybody's favorite part of any PC build is the graphics card for obvious reasons, and for today's build, we're gonna be going with this PNY 5070. Now, this may be a controversial decision because it usually is, but for the price point that we're trying to hit on today's build, we're really only left with 2 options if we want a stronger gaming PC, and that's the 5070 or the 9070 by AMD. The AMD card does have 16 gigs of VRAM over the 5070's 12 gigs, but the 5070 has faster GPU clock speeds, supports DLSS 4, has 2,560 more shading units, and is running on GDDR7 memory rather than the 9070's GDDR6. Now, both cards are fantastic choices and you'd be thrilled with either one of them, but for today's build, I decided to go with the 5070 and I was able to pick this up for $543. And this model was actually cheaper than any other 9070, at least at the time of me recording this video. Just remember, every price is subject to change. I can't control that. I wish I could though. If I could, I'd make everything like $1. And the last things that we are going to need are a pack of fans because our case does not come with any fans, and we are going to need our power supply because as much as I'd love it to, this PC is not going to run on hopes and dreams. For the fans that I went with, I just picked up a pack of Thermalright fans. You can pick up one of these for $17, and for $7 extra, I picked up one additional 120 millimeter fans. These are all 120 millimeter, all black, no RGB fans. $17 for the 5-pack and $7 for this right here. Now, the reason I picked up so many fans is because I'm still not sure if I want to run 3 fans down at the bottom, 2 fans at the top, and 1 exhaust. I don't know if there's gonna be enough clearance once we put the graphics card in there. It's yet to be seen. We'll figure that out in a second. Now, for power supply, I did go with this Rosewell 750 watt semi-modular power supply. These entered the market recently and they've been very well received. I've used this particular model 2 different times in different builds and I was extremely happy with them. Now, there are cheaper options that you could go with when it comes to power supplies, but always exercise caution when you decide to do that because you gotta remember, this is one of, if not the most important thing that you're going to purchase for your PC, as it does have the potential to fry everything inside of your system. So you wanna make sure that you're getting something that is, a very decent quality gaming PC power supply. And these Rosewell units seem to be the sweet spot. Coming in at $70, we get affordability and we get the performance that we want. So that's the rundown of all the hardware that is going into today's build. The only thing that we have left to do is throw on some kick-ass music and throw this thing together. So let's get that started.
Jealous and fantasy, caught up in apathy, tension, the thought leads to agony. Let me carry me to go back to the majesty. Caught up in apathy, tension, the thought leads to agony. Let me carry me to go back to the majesty. Caught up in apathy, tension, the thought leads to agony. Check the duality.
Flashback, before you got mad, then you can crack that. In and out of dolo when a new man to the boys got only when you crack that. Man, I don't act like heads off, yeah, all of that one pack. I could be anywhere, feeling alright. To the game on the head is all mad.
Mwah! Chef's kiss. This thing kicks so much ass, it's not even funny. If you don't believe me, check this out. I tested out 5 different games on this system, all at 1440p, and starting out with something just a little bit easier, I checked out Marvel Rivals. Now, it may not be the most demanding game out there, but regardless, it is extremely popular. And when you crank the settings up all the way, it actually can start to become taxing on a system. And at the game's maximum preset, I was able to get an average FPS of 99. Now, here is where I did something that I don't usually do when I test PCs. I wanted to see what the difference would be if I turned frame gen on and I cranked frame gen all the way up, and that bumped our FPS average to 239 FPS. It is important to know that is the only time I turned frame gen on. I don't typically do that. I was curious, man. Staying with games that are not too pressing on a system, I booted up God of War Ragnarok, no frame gen on, just ultra settings, and we were getting an average of 148 FPS. Now shifting into some much more demanding games, I jumped into Battlefield 6 and I set the graphics to the game's overkill setting, which is crazy that there is an overkill setting, and we're getting an average of 110 FPS. And if you have not played this game, I highly recommend it. Tons of fun, and it looks stunning. Sliding right over into Black Myth Wukong, I set the graphics to very high, and honestly, this system performed better than I thought it would, grabbing us an average FPS of 86. And lastly, I wanted to check out Borderlands 4. Now, this is a game that has had some unbelievable issues at launch, running like complete crap on systems that have like 9950X3Ds and 5090s. Now, after some updates, the game does seem to be running a little bit better. Now, I set the game to its very high preset and was able to get a very beautiful 109 FPS average. Now, I didn't just do gameplay testing on this system, I also did a Time Spy run, and I also did a Cinebench R23 run just because I wanted to see how well this system would do in things other than game testing. In my Time Spy run, this system did receive a score of 18,886, which is gonna put this build above average against similar spec systems. And on Cinebench R23, I did a single core and multi-core run, earning a single core score of 1,874 and a multi-core score of 13,864. So it is, in my opinion, and only my opinion, you may agree with my opinion, but I think that for the $1,200 price tag, this is an absolute beast. At least compared to other brand new systems that I was able to find online. Now, don't take this build as gospel. You could easily shift some things around and come up with like completely different systems at the exact same price point to better suit your needs and what you were looking for. For instance, you could easily increase your CPU to a Ryzen 7 7700X or a 9700X if you went with like a 5060 Ti or a 5060 rather than the 5070 that we went with for this build. If you were somebody who was going to be using the PC for more productivity tasks, then I would absolutely make that change. The Ryzen 7 is going to outperform the Ryzen 5 in any like video editing or like digital creation, that sort of thing. Definitely look into downgrading the GPU a little bit, 5060 Ti, and then increasing your CPU a little bit. And let's say you're not happy with the 1TB Gen 3 SSD we put in here, and you want something like a 2TB Gen 4 SSD, well, you could easily go ahead and, decrease the size of your CPU cooler, maybe go with like a $20 CPU cooler. That would absolutely do a decent job of cooling this CPU. And you could also decrease maybe the speed of the RAM. You could go like 5,600 megatransfers per second, and that RAM usually comes in at around $80. So it would save you around $40 there, putting you a little bit closer to being able to afford a 2TB Gen 4 if you needed more storage space. And all those little tweaks are still gonna keep you at around the $1,200 price tag. So the exact price of this system ended up coming out to $1,207, and I think it's worth every penny. Now, if you did enjoy this video and you want to check out a couple other build options, on your left, I do have a $1,400 absolute beast build that everybody loves. And if that's too expensive and you need something a little cheaper, on your right, you'll find a $650 gaming PC that is worth every penny. Love you guys. See you in the next video.